Caitlin Clark returned from injury, and instead of redemption, we got disaster. In her comeback game, the Indiana Fever got absolutely humiliated by the Golden State Valkyries. But this wasn't just about missed shots. This was about a coach who benched her superstar at the worst moment, a system that's collapsing, and a player clearly furious. From post-game body language to broken game plans, everything points to one thing. The Caitlin Clark-Stephanie White partnership is on the verge of exploding. And after this latest disaster, fans are asking, does Clark need a new coach? Or does White need a new team? Let's break it all down.
That wasn't pretty. Indiana Fever got their ass kicked by the Golden State Valkyries. That's about as simple as it goes. They got an ass whooping. Their coach will be questioned more so than ever before, I would say, today. After a game like that, folks are going to question Stephanie White because the Fever get ran off the floor by the Golden State Valkyries. She decides to start Ari McDonald at point guard.
That wasn't pretty. Indiana Fever got their ass kicked by the Golden State Valkyries. She decides to start Aria McDonald at point guard. Ari and Clark hadn't played with each other before. Stephanie White's decision to start Ari McDonald over Caitlin Clark at point guard wasn't just a strategic choice, it felt like a slap in the face. Clark, returning from injury, didn't even get the keys to the offense she built. Instead, she was stuck in an unfamiliar setup with a guard she's never shared court time with. It showed. The team had no chemistry, no direction, and Clark's rhythm, gone. It wasn't just poor shooting, it was a complete breakdown of identity. White's call here didn't just backfire, it arguably humiliated her franchise player. Fans aren't mad because they lost. They're mad because Caitlin Clark was never given a chance to lead.
Lineup kind of deal, but a couple things were glaring. One is how poorly the Fever shot from the floor, just 31% from the floor. How poorly they shot from three, 22% from three, because that you're not going to win games like that. You're not going to win games like that. And, that is just, you can't shoot that unless you're playing overwhelmingly awesome defense. You cannot shoot like that and expect to win games. So that's part of it, like the broadside of a barn argument, right?
Limited minutes are understandable, especially after back-to-back injuries. But there's a difference between easing a player back in and mismanaging her completely. Caitlin Clark played in strange, scattered stints. The rotations never allowed her to find a rhythm. 1 minute she's pushing tempo, the next she's benched. And when she did return, she wasn't even the primary ball handler. What exactly was the plan? If there was a minutes restriction, fine. But without clear roles or continuity, this game felt more like an experiment than a comeback. Clark was frustrated, and we saw it in her body language all game long.
You see, the Mavs just play differently without Luka on the floor. When he's not on the floor, that ball is moving, it's popping, multiple players getting involved in the action, blah, blah, blah. The post also includes a quote from Mavs radio announcer, lower usage rate from this year. White further commented that Doncic is a player with a high usage rate, keeping the ball in his hands.
Let's talk about that Luka-Doncic comparison. When Stephanie White criticized Luka's usage rate, it wasn't subtle, it was philosophical. She prefers a team where no single star dominates the ball. That sounds noble on paper, until you apply it to Caitlin Clark, a generational on-ball talent. The implication is clear. White doesn't want a heliocentric system built around Clark, and if that's true, it's a massive red flag. You don't draft Caitlin Clark to turn her into Lexi Hull, you draft her to lead. This quote isn't about Luka, it's about Clark. And the message? In this system, there's no room for a superstar.
Caitlin, Timpson, and Dantas, the three of those players, the three of them combined to get the team back in the game. It comes back to 5. Caitlin comes off the floor. They're suddenly down. They're suddenly down 18. What is this team's identity? They're talking about finding their identity. What is it? What is it? You cannot tactically try to grind teams down to scoring less than 60 and win a game in the 60s if you employ Caitlin Clark.
This is the moment that broke the game, and probably broke some trust too. The Fever opened strong, flying out to a 9-point lead behind Clark's aggression. She was scoring, assisting, and energizing the team. It was vintage Caitlin Clark, fast, dynamic, confident. But then, she was pulled. Suddenly, the team slowed down, the pace collapsed, and within minutes, the Valkyries stormed back to an 18-point lead. That's not just a coincidence, that's a coaching failure. Why bench the engine when she's finally heating up? The excuse of minutes management feels weak when the momentum was clearly in her hands. Worse, it sent a message. Even when Caitlin's firing, her impact isn't prioritized. Clark didn't just look exhausted, she looked defeated. Not physically, but mentally. You could see it in her body language, the walking pace, the disengaged eyes, the frustration after plays broke down without her. That 18-point swing? It was more than bad rotations. It was symbolic of a larger issue. This team doesn't seem to understand when to ride their star. And Caitlin Clark knows it.
At this stage last year, they were still out there running teams out of the gym. And look, it is, and like even looking at Caitlin Clark's reaction here, look at Caitlin Clark's reaction, like she's pissed as well. She's pissed as well as to just the way they're playing. Like, just take a listen here. You can see by her body language here.
Steph is talking about kind of taking some pressure off you with Harry kind of running points, some actions, and running off the ball. Just how do you think that will help when you reintegrate onto the court?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be nice probably not to have to bring the ball up against pressure 94 feet, but like I said, like...
She won't even look. Like, this is Caitlin Clark who...
This wasn't just a cold media moment. This was a silent scream. Clark is one of the most expressive athletes in women's sports. Normally, she's direct, articulate, and engaged. But in this post-game interview, she couldn't even make eye contact. She stared at the floor, eyes darting, lips tight, pure frustration radiating off her. The question wasn't aggressive. It was about adjusting her role. Yet her body reacted like she'd just been benched again. Why? Because it's not just about where she plays. It's about why. Being told she'll now play off the ball isn't just a tactical shift. It's an identity crisis. Clark built her career by dominating as a floor general, not by hiding in the corner waiting for kickouts. That's not who she is. And it's not why fans show up in record numbers to see her play. The subtext of this interview screams louder than her words. She's being asked to adapt to a system that isn't adapting to her. She's being told to sacrifice her strengths to make room for a philosophy that may be outdated. And Clark's reaction? Boiling just below the surface. That look wasn't just frustration, it was betrayal. And for someone like Clark, who has carried programs on her back before, this treatment likely feels like a complete misread of who she is and what she brings.
I want to see if I can get any clips of it. Because it was really bad early in the fourth, late in the third. Like, it got real bad. And the Indiana Fever, they play a 3-out, 2-in offense. It is 2025. We are watching a team play a 3-out, 2-in offense in 2025. I repeat, we are watching 3-out.
Let's be honest, this system is a basketball fossil. 3-out, 2-in the year 2025? That's not just outdated. That's offensive malpractice when you have a player like Caitlin Clark on your roster. The game has evolved. Spacing, pace, shooting, drive and kick, that's the modern formula. But Indiana? They're clogging the lane, stacking the paint, and choking off every opportunity for Clark to drive or dish. It's like putting a Ferrari on a gravel road. The result? Clark can't attack downhill. She can't finish at the rim. Defenders overplay her without fear because there's nowhere for her to go. She gets trapped near half court and there's no outlet because the lane is full of her own teammates. Natasha Howard and Aaliyah Boston are both talented, but when they're jammed in the paint with no weak side spacing, they're liabilities. This isn't just a Caitlin Clark problem, it's a system-wide breakdown. It neuters Kelsey Mitchell's cutting, it isolates shooters, it confuses roles, and it creates tension, not just on the court, but in the locker room. Clark looks hesitant, teammates look frustrated, the flow is gone, and worst of all, fans are watching the most exciting prospect in years get shackled by schemes that belong in a VHS tape. You don't draft Caitlin Clark to play inside-out post ball. You draft her to ignite a revolution. And right now, she's being asked to start a fire underwater.
I mean this when I say this. We watched some of the worst basketball I had ever seen. And I think you guys may not understand some of the stuff that the Fever were running when Caitlin Clark was off the floor. Like, or even when she was on the floor, what the Indiana Fever were running. So if you look at their offense, especially when Natasha Howard was in the game, like, I'm going to show you guys, like, if you guys didn't know, the Indiana Fever were down 15 points. And they put Caitlin Clark on with KK and Dantas. And
for all the hype around the Caitlin Clark-Aaliyah Boston duo, this game proved how far the Fever are from actually leveraging that combo. There were 0 meaningful pick and rolls between the two, 0 plays that utilized their gravity together. And that's not just missed opportunity, that's coaching negligence. This isn't a chemistry issue. These two are professionals. They've played enough to know how to run basic two-player action. What's missing is intent. What's missing is system. In a league where the pick and roll is the bread and butter of star duos, Stephanie White's offense looked like it was still in preseason, clunky, outdated, and shockingly disjointed. The numbers back it up. Boston had just 8 shot attempts, Clark shot 4 of 12, and most of their touches came in isolation or busted plays. Meanwhile, the Valkyries were running crisp sets, moving the ball, setting real screens. The Fever? They looked like strangers. This isn't just bad basketball. It's proof that something is broken at the core, and fans watching know it. You don't squander a duo like this unless something deeper, system, trust, or direction, is fundamentally off.
what is it? You cannot tactically try to grind teams down to scoring less than 60 and win a game in the 60s if you employ Caitlin Clark. You can't do that. You can't try to grind teams down. I understand grinding teams down to non-Caitlin Clark minutes. You cannot try to grind teams down in the Caitlin Clark minutes. When Caitlin Clark was on the floor, at least
This quote sums it up. Without Caitlin Clark on the floor, the Fever are practically unwatchable. The offense doesn't stall, it dies. They grind the game to a halt, hoping to win ugly, with slow possessions and isolation plays that belong in another era. That might work for a roster built on veterans and post players. But for a team with Caitlin Clark, it's a disaster. Clark isn't just a scorer, she's the entire offensive engine. When she sits, the Fever don't just lose points, they lose identity. And what makes it worse? The coaching staff doesn't seem to care. Instead of building a system that maximizes her minutes, White seems determined to run the same clogged post-heavy scheme no matter who's on the floor. That means they're playing to their weaknesses, not their strengths. The result is tragic to watch. Clark gets subbed out and the team falls apart. Then she gets thrown back in, expected to clean up the mess. It's unsustainable, it's exhausting, and it's infuriating. Because in those rare moments where they actually run, where they space the floor and let Clark lead, the Fever look dangerous. But those moments are vanishing, and Clark's frustration is growing.
Something's happened, whether it's Lexi or Kelsey Mitchell comes up into this position. I just realized I'm a little bit, you can't really see, so Lexi Hall's kind of in this position here, and the ball's on this side of the floor. So then Aaliyah sets a screen here for Caitlin to curl to here, or on the other side, which has Lexi's defender here, Natasha Howard's defender here, Aaliyah's defender here. So it sends her into a drive on 3 defenders, and with Natasha Howard getting in the way. That's literally, that's all they do. That is their off-the-ball motion offense. Like last year, I'm like, they just run constant quick hitters. I would take running constant quick hitters over this crap. I really would. Stephanie White's offense is
0 assisted field goal attempts. Let that sink in. In a game where Caitlin Clark, a world-class shot creator and offensive dynamo, was supposedly eased back by playing off ball, she literally never touched the ball in a position to score. Not once. That's not just poor strategy. That's sabotage. You don't use Steph Curry as a screener. You don't turn Luka Doncic into a spot-up shooter. And you sure as hell don't park Caitlin Clark in the corner and hope she accidentally gets open. That's what happened here. Off the ball, she was invisible. Not because of effort, because of the system. The other players weren't looking for her. The spacing was atrocious. And the offensive sets, if you can even call them that, were designed for post feeds and contested mid-range shots. Meanwhile, Clark stood on the wing, ghosting through screens no one honored, trying to stay involved while the game passed her by. This is how a generational talent gets wasted. Not by injury, not by attitude, but by a coach who refuses to build around her. When Clark does touch the ball, it's often off broken plays or desperation heaves. She's been reduced to a bailout option instead of the playmaker. It's a slow erosion of her role, and you can see the wear in her eyes. This isn't just tactical disagreement, it's basketball malpractice.
And I mean this when I say this, for the good of the sport of basketball, it has to be Stephanie White. For the good of basketball, it has to be Stephanie White. For the good of basketball, it has to be her. Because let's be real, if Caitlin Clark changes, there is no scenario where Caitlin Clark changes to fit what Stephanie White does and she's an all WNBA player. There's not. I'm sorry. Caitlin Clark is not a good enough catch and shoot 3-point shooter. She's not good enough going right. The reason is because she fires the ball from here. Like for Caitlin Clark to play the way Stephanie White would have to do.
This is the clip that breaks through all the politeness. No more excuses, no more waiting. Someone finally said what so many have been thinking. Stephanie White's system isn't just a bad fit for Caitlin Clark. It's hostile to her very style of play. This isn't about working through growing pains. It's about forcing a square peg into a triangle-shaped death trap. The idea that Caitlin Clark would need 5 off-seasons just to become the type of player Stephanie White wants says it all. Clark is already an all-WNBA level talent when used correctly, but in this system, she's being reconstructed, repressed, and rerouted away from the very things that made her historic. Why? So they can run everybody eats sets where no one scores and spacing doesn't exist? So Natasha Howard can post up while Clark stands on the weak side waiting for a miracle? You don't waste 5 years of a superstar's career forcing her to unbecome herself. If White wants that kind of player, draft someone else. But Clark? She's built to lead. And if Stephanie White can't see that, or worse, won't allow it, then one of them has to go. For the good of the team, for the good of the league, and for the good of basketball. Let's call this what it really is, a crisis. Not just a bad loss or a rough return. This is the basketball equivalent of trying to fly a rocket with the manual for a lawnmower. Caitlin Clark, the biggest star in women's basketball, just got benched, neutralized, and sidelined in her own return game. And if you listened closely, if you watched her face, her body language, and her comments, you could see the fire under the surface. She's furious, and she has every right to be. The Indiana Fever are stuck in a philosophical identity crisis. On one hand, they have a generational talent who thrives on pace, tempo, and high usage. On the other, they have a coach clinging to control, prioritizing system over star power, and forcing modern weapons into outdated formations. It's like trying to win the Indy 500 with a horse and buggy, and blaming the horse when it doesn't fly. The numbers are damning. The eye test is worse. And the morale? Flatlined. Players look confused. The offense is stagnant. And Caitlin Clark is being wasted as a decoy in a league that was made for her skill set. So now the Fever have a choice. Stick with Stephanie White and hope Caitlin becomes a system player, even though that system is clearly broken? Or hand the keys to the one player who can actually save this franchise and build something new around her? Because let's be real, Clark's not the problem here. She's the lighthouse in the storm. And if Indiana keeps sailing blindly into the rocks out of pride, not vision, they won't just lose games, they'll lose the future. So, what do you think? Is it time for the Fever to choose? Is Stephanie White the right coach, or the wrong era? And how long will Caitlin Clark put up with this? Drop your take below, because this conversation is just getting started.